Welcome to the debate. If you've ever had a cavity filled, you have probably inhaled nitrous oxide, right? Laughing gas?
Yeah, the low-stakes high of a dental chair.
Exactly. You get a little giggly, the dentist does their work, you go home, and you are totally fine. But the central question we are looking at today is why emergency rooms are suddenly filled with 20-year-olds who inhaled that exact same gas and, well, can no longer feel their own legs.
Right, because the cultural narrative around this stuff is just completely fractured right now. We went from that heavily monitored dental visit straight into a horrifying epidemic of profound nerve damage on the streets.
And that is the exact tension we are digging into today. I'm coming at this from the perspective that, for decades, this gas lived in the festival circuit as a fairly manageable, occasionally silly thing. I look at the kids in wheelchairs today, and I see a crisis driven by predatory corporate industrialization. Like, we need deep education and harm reduction to combat these legal loopholes, not panic.
Look, man, I get the whole peace, love, and balloons nostalgia, but from where I'm standing, that is a really dangerous fairy tale. My position is that you are trying to put a safety sticker on an inherently vicious neurotoxin. The whole idea of safe recreational use is a myth we just have to drop right now.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective. You can't just look at those paralyzed kids in a vacuum. You really have to look at how we got here. Historically, nitrous ox, hippie crack, as the scene calls it, has been around live music and festivals forever.
Yeah, passing around a dirty tank in the mud.
Well, it was an incredibly self-regulating culture for the vast majority of that time. Studies out of the UK during the early 2010s, right at the peak of its resurgence, they show that roughly 80% of users took fewer than 10 balloons a year. It was the $10 balloon you bought from a guy with a tank after a show, you giggled with your friends, and you moved on with your life.
Self-regulating is a very generous term for that, but go on.
The scale was completely different, though. A traditional whipped cream charger, a Whippet, has about 6.5 grams of nitrous oxide. You need a specialized metal cracker to open it. It literally freezes your hands. It's tedious.
It puts a natural speed limit on the binge.
Exactly. That physical process naturally puts a speed limit on how much a person can do in one sitting. Now, contrast that with a nightmare we are seeing right now. We have the galaxy gas phenomenon.
Right, the massive canisters hitting the streets.
These corporate entities found a massive legal loophole. Because nitrous oxide is used as a propellant in the culinary industry, literally to make whipped cream foam up, it is entirely legal to manufacture in cell. So companies started manufacturing 2,000-gram tanks.
Which is just insane.
2,000 grams. That is the equivalent of over 300 traditional Whippets in a single cylinder. And they aren't selling these to pastry shops. They are putting them on the shelves of neighborhood vape shops wrapped in bright neon colors, flavored like strawberry watermelon and blue raspberry.
Oh, the marketing is undeniably brazen. I won't dispute that at all.
It is beyond brazen. Selling a 2,000-gram neon pink tank of nitrous in a local vape shop is like selling a keg of beer at a child's lemonade stand. The packaging completely disguises the lethal volume inside. They've taken a subculture that operated on occasional low-dose use and turned it into an industrial-scale trap for teenagers.
Okay, but
Of course, we are seeing neurotoxicity spike. You put a nozzle on 300 hits of gas and hand it to an 18-year-old who thinks it's just a vape. The danger isn't that the molecule magically changed. The danger is the predatory volume. If we shut down that culinary loophole and stop the massive supply, we mitigate the crisis.
I hear the frustration about the marketing, but you are confusing the delivery mechanism with the actual poison. The volume only accelerates an already inevitable biological sabotage. It's not like bigger tanks magically invented the toxicity.
You don't think jumping from 6 grams to 2,000 grams is the primary driver of this epidemic?
No, I think it's gasoline on a fire that was already burning. Let's actually look at the history of this supposedly manageable gas you're defending. Joseph Priestley isolated it way back in 1772, and Humphrey Davy popularized it shortly after.
Right. Davy was the first real advocate for its recreational potential.
He thought it expanded human consciousness.
He did. He wasn't using it for dentistry. He was throwing these massive after-hours parties in his laboratory. He was essentially the original festival kid, completely romanticizing the high. He famously called it the air in heaven.
And people have been chasing that experience ever since.
Yeah, well, let's look at how the air in heaven treated him. Davy suffered his first stroke at the exceptionally young age of 47. He was dead by 50. And modern neurology tells us exactly why that happened.
Because of the homocysteine buildup, right?
Exactly. When you inhale nitrous oxide, it does something very specific and very violent to your body. It stops your body from being able to convert an amino acid called homocysteine. So you get a massive buildup of it in your blood, which drastically spikes your risk of blood clots, heart attacks, and strokes.
Which tragically we are seeing reflected in current emergency room data.
We're seeing 27-year-olds having massive widowmaker heart attacks after weekend binges because their arteries are choked with clots. The chemical itself is the threat. The bright pink canister just determines how fast you hit the wall.
Okay, but wait. If the chemical is an absolute, uncontrollable evil like you're saying, how do we explain the medical field? Dentists use it every single day. Women use it during childbirth to manage pain.
You cannot compare a dental chair to a parking lot.
But is administered safely all the time. That tells me the danger isn't inherent to the molecule itself. It's about how it is managed. In a medical setting, it's mixed with pure oxygen. The dosage is strictly locked down, and the environment is controlled.
Yeah, it's a highly monitored, acute medical intervention. That is a completely different universe of exposure from an unregulated street binge.
But we can adapt those safety principles. This is the entire core of harm reduction. If we educate users instead of just giving them the whole drugs are bad speech, we can actually make a difference.
Harm reduction for this specific substance is a dangerous delusion.
Why? We teach them to space out their usage so their bodies can recover. We teach them to take actual breaths of oxygen instead of rebreathing into a rubber balloon until they turn blue and pass out. And, crucially, we tell them to supplement heavily with vitamin B12 to replace what the gas depletes. We take the safety of the medical framework and we bring it into the cultural framework.
See, this is exactly what I mean by a fairy tale. This idea that you can just take a vitamin gummy and hack your way out of neurotoxicity is the most destructive delusion in the entire harm reduction narrative.
I really disagree with that. It's basic biology.
You cannot supplement your way out of this because you are fundamentally misunderstanding how the biochemistry actually works.
Well, breathe that down for me then. If the drug is depleting vitamin B12 from your system, logic says if you put more vitamin B12 into your system, you balance the scales. You build a reservoir before a festival, you replenish after.
That would make perfect sense if nitrous oxide just depleted B12, the way, say, sweating depletes your hydration. But it doesn't. It functionally inactivates it.
Inactivates it? How is that different from depleting it?
Let me try to visualize this for you. Your nervous system, your spinal cord, your brain, your peripheral nerves, is basically a massive network of electrical wires. And just like real wires in your house, they need rubber insulation so they don't short circuit.
Right, the myelin sheath.
Exactly. Now, to build and maintain that myelin insulation, your body needs vitamin B12. Think of B12 as a highly specific, custom-cut key that turns the lock on the myelin manufacturing machine in your cells.
Okay, so B12 is the T. Got it.
What nitrous oxide does is horrific. It oxidizes the cobalt core of the B12 molecule. In plain terms, it physically bends the metal of the key. It permanently deactivates it.
Wait, so the B12 is still physically in your body, but it's completely useless?
You nailed it. The gas is like battery acid eating away at the rubber insulation on your electrical wires and simultaneously melting the only tool your body has to fix it.
That is an intense visual.
If you take a B12 supplement while actively using nitrous, your body cannot process it. The gas is continually breaking the machinery. You can swallow a whole bottle of B12 pills, but you are just flooding your bloodstream with useless, bent keys.
Okay, I hear the mechanics of the bent key analogy, and it is terrifying. But surely if you stop using for a week and then take the supplements, your body clears the gas and uses the fresh B12 to rebuild the myelin?
The medical literature explicitly refutes this safety net you're trying to build. We have numerous published case reports of patients who considered themselves highly educated users.
Meaning they were following the harm reduction steps?
Exactly.
They knew the risks. They actively took heavy B12 supplements to protect themselves, and they still developed severe neurotoxicity. They still developed what we call subacute combined degeneration of the spinal cord.
Which means what practically for the person experiencing it?
That's the medical term for when your spinal cord essentially starts to dissolve from the inside out. The insulation rots away. And the really terrifying part? Their B12 blood tests often come back looking completely normal to a doctor.
Because the useless B12 is still floating in their blood.
Yes, the doctor sees the concentration and says, "Oh, you're fine." But it is chemically dead. So when harm reduction advocates tell kids to just take this vitamin and they're safe, they are handing them a bulletproof vest made of paper. The only way to stop the myelin from stripping is to stop inhaling the gas entirely.
The biological reality of the B12 oxidation is stark. I will absolutely grant you that. That is exactly the kind of deep, mechanical education that needs to reach the public, rather than just vague warnings.
But vague warnings are all harm reduction actually provides when you ignore the chemistry.
No, that's unfair. Harm reduction is about pragmatism. If you toss out harm reduction entirely, what's your alternative? Prohibition? Because we already have hard data on why bringing the sledgehammer of the law down on this fails catastrophically.
It's not a sledgehammer, it's recognizing a poison for what it is and treating it accordingly.
But look at the United Kingdom. In 2016, they passed the Psychoactive Substances Act. They made it entirely illegal to supply nitrous oxide for recreational use. Did it magically stop the festival kids from doing balloons? No. It did what prohibition always does.
It pushed the entire market into the shadows.
Exactly. It certainly disrupted the ease of access, sure. You couldn't just buy it at a corner store anymore. But look at what replaced the corner store. It created an actual, organized underground. People in the scene literally call them the nitrous mafia.
Cartoonish at all. You had organized groups using bolt cutters to steal massive medical-grade tanks directly from hospital loading docks. They'd roll these stolen tanks into concert parking lots, violently defend their turf, and sell balloons out of the trunks of cars.
Okay, but that is a law enforcement issue.
It is a public health issue. When you criminalize the substance, you hand the keys over to the black market. You lose any ability to regulate what's actually in the gas. And worse, you terrify the users.
Terrify them how?
Think about the biology you just described. If an 18-year-old starts feeling that tingling in their legs, the early warning sign of their myelin breaking down, and they know they've been engaging in illegal drug use, they hide it.
They avoid the hospital.
Yes, they do not go to the doctor until they literally cannot walk. Criminalizing this is like treating a broken arm by cutting it off. You create massive secondary trauma, gang violence, unregulated tainted gas, fear of hospitals, without actually fixing the underlying cultural demand. We have to treat this as a public health crisis driven by deceptive marketing, not a criminal one.
You're worried about the secondary trauma of the law? Let's talk about the primary trauma. The raw, physical aftermath that this laid-back festival culture consistently ignores while they're debating policy. Let's look at the harrowing, real-world human cost of pretending this is just a party favor.
The human cost is exactly why I want the corporate loopholes closed.
But the human cost is happening because the culture normalizes the high in the first place. There's a 20-year-old named Musa from the UK. Because he bought into the exact festival mythology you're describing, that this is just harmless laughing gas, he is now entirely bedbound.
Wow. Completely bedbound at 20?
Yes. He experiences violent full-body shakes, his vision is permanently blurred. He recalls waking up one morning, stepping out of bed, and simply collapsing to the floor because he literally could not feel his own legs. His spinal cord had degraded that much.
Those stories are absolutely heartbreaking. Which is why the companies masking this stuff as candy are so insidious. They are preying on that innocence.
It's not just the marketing, it's the profound ignorance of the drug's nature. Look at Letitia Holder. She used this gas for 3 years. 3 years of operating under the assumption that it was just a regular, manageable part of the party scene. She is now paralyzed.
That is horrific.
She is currently undergoing grueling, agonizing physical therapy at Sinai Grace Hospital, just hoping to regain basic motor functions like moving her toes. The romanticization of this drug as some cultural staple actively enables these tragedies.
I hear you, but
When you preach harm reduction for a chemical that is literally dissolving the insulation off a human spinal cord, you are providing intellectual cover for a substance that is destroying a generation's mobility.
Okay, let me stop you there. I completely reject the idea that I am providing cover for the damage. The damage is horrific and I take it seriously. But I am trying to operate in the reality of human behavior.
Human behavior is exactly what we need to correct.
But people have sought out altered states of consciousness since the dawn of time. You aren't going to scare them out of it with raw panic. If a teenager walks into a vape shop today, they are confronted with rows of brightly colored galaxy gas boxes that look exactly like energy drinks.
Which is why they need to know what's actually inside them.
Yes, but if we simply scream at them, this is an evil neurotoxin that will paralyze you, without explaining why the B12 gets deactivated, or how these companies are exploiting a culinary loophole to get rich off their nerve damage, they will write us off as alarmist boomers who don't know what we're talking about.
So tell them the truth. Treating them like intelligent adults means giving them the unvarnished biological reality. There is no safe recreational threshold for a gas that asphyxiates the brain and bends the chemical keys your body needs to survive.
But the scale matters. The 2,000-gram tanks have accelerated the crisis.
The industrialization is predatory. I can see that entirely. But the fundamental danger isn't the neon pink packaging. It's the physiological reality that nitrous oxide is profoundly incompatible with the human nervous system. We do these kids a massive disservice by pretending they can outsmart the chemistry if they just take enough breaks.
I think where we fundamentally diverge is on how you change a culture. I believe that by exposing the cynical, profit-driven nature of this, by showing users exactly how they are being exploited by companies selling disguised industrial tanks, we can shift the behavior from within.
By leaning into the anti-corporate angle?
Exactly. You strip away the cool factor when you show them the corporate greed. Education and targeted regulation offer a way out that prohibition just doesn't.
And I maintain that you cannot negotiate with a dissolving spinal cord. Acknowledging the absolute inherent toxicity of the drug has to take precedence over protecting the naive sensibilities of the festival scene.
Well, despite our different frameworks, we are staring at the exact same terrifying endpoint. Whether you view this through the lens of predatory corporate marketing and cultural exploitation, or through the stark, unforgiving reality of its neurotoxic effects, the outcome is undeniable.
Completely agree. The sheer volume of the gas flooding the streets right now, combined with the total public ignorance of how it actually destroys the nervous system, is creating a neurological crisis that our emergency rooms are already struggling to handle.
It demands that we look much deeper into the reality of what is being sold to us and what we are putting into our bodies. We encourage everyone listening to look past the laughing gas joke. There is so much more to explore in the medical and legal source material regarding how this chemical actually functions.
Because when you finally understand the mechanics happening beneath the surface, you realize it is truly no laughing matter.
Next time you hear that sharp, metallic hiss echoing across a campground at 3 in the morning, you will know exactly what is silently happening in the dark. Thank you for joining us on The Debate.